Well, hello everybody. This is going to be, we're going to present our discussion group. Our team members are Nazarí Vital, Nadia Yañez, and me, Vanessa Ortiz. So we decided that today we were going to carry out our discussion group by having this mind map and some questions. So let's begin. Girls, are you ready? Let's begin with our first question. Okay. So our first question is, how do you perceive your development as a teacher? Nasa, would you like to start?
Sure. Well, I will say that my professional development started like last semester, because it was when I first started to teaching. So I think that one of the stages, like here we presented the mind map, survival, discovery, exploration, stabilization, experimentation, and renewal. I think that the one that most got me was survival, because when I first started to teaching, it was like, okay, I wasn't teaching before, but I was mentally prepared to give face-to-face classes. I was mentally prepared to say, okay, I'm going to be with students. I'm gonna play games with them, use flashcards, games, songs, interactive teaching, but with physical material. And when it happened that I got to teach, then pandemic started, and then I had to like suddenly move to online. And I know that a lot of teachers like didn't have this knowledge of how to discover the online world, but it was my first experience in something I didn't have an idea. I didn't have experience teaching in the first place. So it was kind of hard. I even had to ask help for my classmates to help me plan, to help me to develop what I was going to teach. And now I feel very comfortable with it. So I think I'm right now in a stabilization. But now that we are about to, some schools are going to face or hybrid mode. Now I think that I'm in my comfort zone and I will be back in my survival stage, because then I will know how to start with face-to-face classes. Even if back then I had the notion or like the idea, now I don't, because it's 2 years later. So I think it kind of will change for me, my professional development and cycle. I think it will be survival again soon when I have to go back to face-to-face. And what do you think, Nadia? What is your stage right now?
Well, I think it's kind of complicated for me because I started teaching borrowing a class and I had to go, it has been intermittent. It hasn't been like a continuous process. So first of all, I just went through a long survival stage, because I started with online classes and I had no ideas and I had to get to know my students, and it was an intensive course. So they were every day taking the classes, and it was quite early and they didn't turn on their cameras. It was complicated. It was something really different from what I expected to be when I was a teacher. I had this idea that I was going to be working with people like you, Nessa, face to face and doing all of these games and stuff. And I had to translate that to an online environment. But then I went to a discovery phase, because I started to realize that I could do a lot of things. I could take care of advantage of many tools and many things that I could use. So I think I'm still in exploration now, because I keep learning how to use certain things and the effect it has on my students and how they react to them, because it's always different depending on the group and the time of the day, etc. I think it's like I'm still learning what works, what doesn't work, and what I can implement differently. So yeah, I think I'm still on the exploration phase for me. How about you, Vane?
Well, I was going to tell you, I think that we all have gone through all those stages. And I think that is normal. I mean, for example, we all started like knowing nothing about teaching, and we all went through the survival stage, and I'm sure that we are going to go again. Well, when I started teaching my first year, I of course went through the survival stage, and then we got COVID, and then we went back to school, and I went again over the survival stage. So I think that is normal. And like I think I have been developing my teaching, yeah, my teaching practice in a good way. I mean, sometimes of course I commit mistakes, and I'm human. We're human, so that's part of it. And as I was mentioning, when we went back to face-to-face classes, I was in the survival stage, and I thought I was like I stayed in the survival stage like almost for at least 1 month, the first month, all September, because I was like I just wanted to quit. Like really, like I didn't want to still be with my kids because they were a lot. Now that I have them, that I have had them like for 2 more months, I love them, and I'm so happy. But the first months were like, no, 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 I can't do it. I cannot do it. I cannot do it. And I think then I went to the Discovery also, as you, Nadia, and I discovered that they are so capable of doing many different things, and I had to take advantage of that. And I think that now I am kind of between exploration and stabilization, because I have 24 students, and I'm like trying to kind of exploring what can I do with them and how they will react to these different activities or the different tasks that I give to them. And but also I think I'm part of also in stabilization, because now we're working in a good way. I mean, we're like, they are fine with me. I feel comfortable. They feel comfortable with me. So I think that is kind of good. Yeah, I think so. Nasa, would you like to comment something?
Yes, well, now that I hear you girls talking, I just like kind of realized that in that discovery stage, I kind of realized that it was pretty similar the way of teaching online that face to face. You know, in like you have the same activities, you use Kahoot in the classroom as well. You use projector, you use slides. That aspect is like, you know, a whole general, like the same. But what it sets heavy, like in the change, is classroom management, because there is where what I'm gonna do. How am I gonna deal with students differently, And now that I hear Vanessa, I understand, like, you know what? I have my class set. I understand how to manage my classroom online, and then I have to change it back again to, you know, to face, but not only me, students as well. And they are children and they don't know how to behave in school. So that is like, that part of teaching is the hardest in this COVID situation, because you have to move, and not only you, students, and both have to homologate, and get into a point with both understands. Because when we were starting to go to the VA, all the children knew, all the students knew what was going to the school meant. But now it's not like that anymore, especially with young children. I mean, with teenagers, it's not so, or with older kids, but with small ones like Vane has. And also for your older students, when they had to move to online, that was a heavy change for them. So that's kind of what it sets heavy, like in this discovery and exploration stage. And it's hard to stabilize because you don't know what to do at first, and it takes a while for you to understand.
Yes, you're right, Nasa. I think it is all a process. I mean, something that you mentioned is that they don't know how to behave at school. And that is really, really true. I mean, they were at home almost 1 year, no, 1 year. They were at home 1 year. And they lack of socialization. They were like far away from their classmates. They something that I can see in my students is that they have zero tolerance. They just like they are not patient. They don't respect the turns. All the manners that we work in the school are gone, like really, really gone. I mean, they don't know how to say please. They don't know how to say thank you. They don't say good morning, good afternoon, bye, I'll see you tomorrow. No. So it's all about a process. I mean, it is hard for us as teachers, of course, and it is harder for them to understand this part. I mean, they come from home where the mom says like, ah, yes, 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 mijito, haz lo que tú quieras. And then they come here and it's like, the teacher is telling me to do that, but I don't want to do it. And it's like, it's hard. Yeah, but don't worry, it's just a process. Nadia, yes.
Yeah, it's just that like what you were saying, I work with adults, they are around their ages, and even they have this struggle because I say good morning when I log into the class, no one answers. I say, how are you? And no one answers. And I think this kind of, I think it will have an impact when they come back face to face, because you cannot turn off your camera if you're face to face. You cannot just be chilling and not answering, you know? So it might have an impact even on adults.
You know what, now that you mentioned that, today I had something with one of my students. They were talking, two of my students were talking. And I mentioned the lack of socialization, and two of my students were talking today. One of my students was asking some questions to the other student, and then the other student suddenly like just push him and like just walk away. And I was like, what the fuck? What? And I was like, are you okay? So then I asked what the boy that pushed the other boy. And he told me like, es que me estaba hablando y pues yo no quería que me hablara, yo ya no quería hablar con él, no quería escucharlo, así que lo empujé y me fui. And I was like, how dare you? I mean, now that you say that you cannot turn off your camera, it's like, you cannot just push your classmate because you don't want to hear them. But this lack of socialization is hard. It's like, I think we do not pay a lot of attention because we are more worried about the academic part that like all the grades and you need to have a 10 or something like that. But the socialization part is super important. So I don't know who raised the hand first. I don't know, Nasa, go.
Yes, no, I just wanted to comment that now that you are mentioned these incidents, I had a new student coming to my class. She's an intermediate, but she's from another class, but she reviewed like topics with me. And I was like, okay, her name is Ana Pau, and I want her to introduce herself, but everybody had the cameras off. And I was like, okay, introduce yourself. And she started to introduce herself, and then I wanted everybody to introduce themselves, but I asked them to turn on the camera because I want everybody to see each other. And when they turned the camera, they were like, oh, I already took classes with you. Hi, Abraham, how are you? And they were like introducing themselves because they didn't know they knew each other because the cameras are always off, you know? They don't know each other, and they didn't even realize that they did in this case. But this is kind of like a huge thing because I had a German classmate, and I wanted to research him like for my methodology class, and we have a girl in common, a friend in common, so I get in contact with him through this girl. And he talked to me like, oh, how are you? My name is Obed, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I'm Nasa, I took classes with you. And he was like, oh, sorry, I don't recognize you. Because he didn't knew my face, because I always have internet problems here in my house, as everybody knows at this point. And yes, I always have my camera off. So he didn't know me. Like, even though we had classes for one semester, he didn't recognize me. He didn't like, who are you? Not even for the name.
It is
Yeah,
hard, and it
so
is such a
it is
strong
hard
point.
to socialize. It's hard to
Yes.
like have this, this classroom harmony that you usually do in this language classroom context.
Mhm. Of course, yes, it is. It is very important. Everything. Okay, so thank you for answering. Now, let's go then to our next question. What was the impact of what you have, which actually is the impact of what you have learned during the BA in your teaching? I think this is something important. For example, I would like to start. I think, for example, this semester has been rough and has been like with a lot of research in the methodology class, and also here we have been working with action research. So I would like you to comment, of course, the impact that has had the BA, but also the research. I mean, I think it is not something new for us, but I would like to know your opinion about it. What do you think? I don't know if Nadia wants to start first.
Yeah, I will. Well, for the BA, I kind of see it like here as a big thing, because I can separate it. For the teaching techniques, we have learned a lot of how to work with the students, how to teach, and the techniques that we can use. But we have to learn about ourselves. Like it was mentioned in this class, actually, knowledge about the language and about teaching, okay?
Mhm.
Because it's not the same thing. But in order to know how to teach, I think it is important to know ourselves as teachers and how we work and how we like to be in the future, and the processes that are taking place during our development. So I think this is really important to realize that it is a big spectrum, not just a teacher that knows the language and does what they do. It's way more than that. So that's my opinion.
Okay, I agree. I agree. NASA?
Well, I would like to comment that I've learned like a lot in these last semesters because the charge of work have been huge, but also we have been like, going through topics that we really didn't realize before. For example, in observation, we have to observe our classes, and that's something like very, very hard at the beginning. Like I remember the first time I saw my first video that I self-recorded for the observation class, and I had a lot of them and I didn't watch them because I want, like, to give a time to choose one. And I started to watch them and I was like, oh my God, this is me. I was feeling like pena ajena, like of myself. Like, oh my God, is that my
That's my
voice?
voice.
Is that my voice? Yes. Yes. And oh my God, my accent, how horrible is it? And I was like just paying attention of me, on how I
Mhm.
teach, on how I reacted and everything. And now in this semester, I learned to pay attention to my students more than to myself, because of my action research, that is past tense. My students had trouble with the past tense, so I had to notice that some of my teaching was not like effective because they were not able to recall, and I had to pay attention to what I teach and how I teach and which techniques and which materials to help them notice and to help them learn. And also, not only in this class, but in the other observation class that I take with Neil, he makes me realize another things that I never thought about, because I always was concentrated. Okay, I need my students to be engaged with my class. I need to use topics that interest my students. And that was like always I worrying about at the beginning of the semester. But then I got observed a few classes with Neil, and then he made me understand like, okay, you present these materials, but they seem too difficult for your students. They are engaged, but they are getting too long to answer. And also you are using too difficult words. And the topic is nice, but you need to like lower down what you are teaching because it's a little bit too advanced for them. And they were able, and I noticed that because they were able to work with the material while I was helping them, but they weren't able to recall afterwards. So that's where I started to use, drilling, because I understood that they had to repeat in order to get the language, because they were not getting it just by one time presenting it. So that's something that I really learned this semester, like to pay attention to what I'm teaching, how and why.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Nasa. I think that's great. You mentioned some great points. I'm going to share my experience with you, and then I'm going to ask you some questions. Well, the next question, in well, let me share my experience first. So I think that the VA has had a really big impact in my teaching. I mean, I entered to the VA because I wanted to know how to teach. As Nadia mentioned, it is so different. Only the knowledge of the language and the knowledge of how to transmit the knowledge. It sounds weird, but it is so different. I mean, what is the purpose of having the language if you don't know how to explain it to others, if you're a teacher? So I think that it has had a big impact in my life. And for example, I started teaching before I entered to the VA, and then when I enter, I just like make these connections. I have been working all the VA. I mean, we have now 3 years in the VA, almost 4, and I have been working almost 4 years. So all the things that I saw, well, that we saw in the different subjects that we have had up to now, and I can make that connection, like the link between what I'm doing and what I'm learning. So I think it has had a lot of impact in my life. And going back to what Nasa said about the different reflection that she has had, I want you to think about your teaching and how these subjects about, for example, last semester that we had the other class about observation, and that we had to record ourselves. What did you notice that make you change, or how did you reflect? What did you reflect? What you learn about yourself as a teacher, yourself as a person, about your class? I don't know. Can you tell me a little bit about it? Yes, Nadia.
Yeah, I kind of related to one of the factors that are written here in our map, the one about the personality. I always saw myself as really shy and really quiet, and I had a really hard time trying to get my personality into the teacher figure that I had, because for me, teachers were outgoing and bubbly and happy and funny. So I kind of struggled to like match my personality with that concept, So I started like watching myself, and I noticed that I was not as quiet and as shy as I thought I was. And I actually have been enjoying this development, because I have been told that I make good connection with the students and that I have a good presence in the classroom. So this kind of change is quite important for me, because now that I have all this knowledge and that I have this practice, it's good to see these results, and to realize the little things that you never noticed before, and that you can apply what you learn to what you do. I think this is really, for me, that's the impact that everything has had in my teaching practice.
Excellent. Okay, perfect. I like your answer. I think I have more or less the same answer, but let's listen to Nessa.
Sorry, I didn't unmute me. Okay, now that I think of Nadia's situation, I think with me was just the opposite. Like I had to, okay, Nasa, you have to keep it serious. Now you're the teacher. Okay, you can't make fun with your student. You like make fun of them. You can't tell cruel jokes. Settle down. Because I'm usually, very sarcastic and meany sometimes. So I had to learn like to keep it serious or to be a little bit strict because I'm like too relaxed. And I observe that of myself. Like, usually I'm like, you know, laughing of everything and being sarcastic and telling things to others. But these are children. I can't be like that with them. I have to be patient. I'm not patient. But I discovered that when I was looking my videos, I was very patient with my students. Like, you know, take them hands and here is the knowledge. Try to understand it, please. But I wasn't like angry. And that's something that really surprised me because I'm usually very angry when people don't do what I want them to. And and that's something that you have to really separate because even you have your own personality, you can act as you are with your students because you are in a professional environment. And that's something like you have to separate there. Not that you have to change completely yourself, but you have, like Nadia said, okay, I was surprised that I'm not as serious as I thought because you separate a little bit yourself from the professor because you are doing a job. You have to have your face teacher anyway.
Yes, yes, I totally agree with you, Nasa. Yes, of course. Um, it is kind of fun that you mentioned that because sometimes, I mean, it's your personality and you need to like shape your personality to fit with the kids. And that's good. I think you did it perfectly. Like I have seen your classes and how you put all the effort that you put in your slides and your material. And I love it. I mean, I think you did it perfectly. And in my point of view, I think that all these reflective teaching and yeah, all these reflections that we have had up to now within all the classes that we have had, I think that it helped me to realize that this is really what I love to do. And it sounds like a cursi, but I really, really love to teach. I mean, I really love to teach children and I really love to be with them. And this has helped me a lot to know how who I am as a teacher and how I act like a, well, not like as a teacher. And to be honest, of course I do change because it is not the same. I am not the same person inside and outside the classroom. So now I remember one of my students saw me in the street and I was walking with my boyfriend and she was like, teacher, ¿tienes novio? And I was like, no, it's just my friend. It's just my friend. But it's like I'm a different person and they don't notice that I am a different person. But I think this has helped me a lot. And not only to know myself as a teacher, but also to recognize, as you mentioned, Nessa, like for example, in the video recordings that we had to do on last semester, it helped me to realize which mistakes I have or the problems that I need to solve. And I think that's good. I mean, I'm going to be a better teacher for my future students. And thinking about my past students, I mean, put of them when I didn't know anything about teaching. And I just entered to the class and like, hey, I'm going to show you how to speak in English. Yes. But I think it's really, really, really helpful. So I think Nadia has internet problems and she's gone. But it's time we need to finish the discussion group now.
Okay, I think we should say a little conclusion.
Mhm.
And I will say that something I really learned through reflecting, through observing myself, through being observed, is that this learning how to teach process is a huge thing. Every time that I enter a new semester, I discover something that I was doing wrong. I mean, there
Yeah.
is not like I'm doing everything wrong, but I'm not doing everything right either. I have to improve every time. And the more I learn, the more I discover I have to improve. The more I discover I have to work on my teaching. And I think if this profession is not easy, like only the people that are really passionate about it could do it. Because if not,
Yes.
there is going to be a bad teaching practice. And I think that everybody knows like that special teacher that you don't like you won't like to be like, and that teacher that you admire and you want to be exactly like that. But
Of
also
course.
like you need to discover yourself and discover your own good teaching practices. And I think like this observing and being observed help us, even though we want to cry when we get the comments, but it's helpful after all. So I think it's something that really are helping us to improve what we are doing, like our teaching.
Of course, yeah. I think it is a process. As I have been saying this semester to myself, it is a process. And I mean, we're humans and we are not going to do everything right. Even though, for example, the teachers that have now 20 years teaching, they still face some critical incidents, and it's okay. I mean, we're not perfect, and even though you have many years teaching, you are going to commit mistakes, and that's normal. And I think we need to really understand that and not to be so hard on ourselves. But yeah, I think this semester especially, and last semester also, have been really in I forgot the word. Rough, yes, rough. But not engaging in jargon, like enriquecedores. I don't know how to say.
I don't know
But
either.
yes.
Okay.
Okay. So then I think we are done, and well, we'll see you later.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye.